get started, thank you so much for taking some time to be back. Many of you have been here before, and so when Ginger begins in a moment, she's going to truncate her comments. I know Sarah, and I'm not sure that Gia and Bill have had an opportunity to hear her piece, but it has been recorded already, and I believe you've received at least the opportunity to view the previous workshops via recording. So Cindy sent those out, I think. If you haven't, then she's going to send them out, so we'll check with Cindy and make sure.
I think last Friday they went out, maybe.
Okay, great.
We haven't gotten them yet.
Okay, we'll check with
okay.
Cindy then,
Thank you,
so that
Town.
if you want to watch the previous demonstrations, the first was an experiment, and then last week we did some case study analysis and using whiteboards and screen sharing, so you'll have a chance to view those if you wish to. So welcome to this third of 4 workshops. It's a collaboration between the Academy for Teaching and Learning and the Hankamer School of Business. As you know from Dean Manus and your faculty, fall faculty meeting, the point of this workshop is to help you think about opportunities for teaching in your new space when you move into your building in this, I guess in the summer, hopefully. Cross fingers. We're excited about that for you. It's going to be a great opportunity to rethink your pedagogy and your approach to student learning. So Ginger's my colleague in the ATL. She's going to talk about the spaces. This is based upon some information Anthony has shared with us, Anthony Lakes, on what the space will look like for you, the various configurations you'll have access to. So Ginger has tied that to different kinds of pedagogy. And if you look in your folder, you'll see also on those handouts not only the different spaces you'll have, but then some teaching strategies that might work particularly well for different kinds of spaces. So you'll look at those. So Ginger will talk about those, and then we actually have a special guest to provide a testimonial about the advantages of these kinds of spaces. So Ginger, over to you.
Thank you. Well, as many of you have heard, because you've attended some of the previous workshops, the reason that you'll be getting these active learning spaces is tied to a larger movement that's happening across the country, not just in business schools, but in other programs like STEM fields, physics classes, math classes, even humanities classes like English classes are moving toward an active learning environment, an active learning classroom. And a few years ago, it all started at North Carolina State University, and Robert Beatner, a physics professor there, decided that he wanted to take his 100-person physics class and make it more hands-on, make it more interactive. Instead of lecturing to them for the whole period of time, he wanted to give them interesting opportunities to experiment with the issues involved in his field. And so he designed this, what we call active learning room, that is the predecessor of the kind of rooms that you'll be having in your new building next year. His model, this is a picture of his model. It's called the Scale Up model. It stands for student-centered active learning environments with upside-down pedagogies. Upside-down pedagogies referencing the flipped classroom model that you might have heard about. But really, a key part of that is student-centered. So you notice that we have pods. There are tables. They have 9 seats to a pod. That allows each table to become really 3 different groups of 3 people. And the difference in instruction in a class like this is an active learning classroom and the traditional model of classroom is that students are able to talk more amongst themselves and do something really interesting with their work. So whereas in a traditional classroom environment, there might be assignments, typical problem sets that students would do outside of class. The active learning classroom allows students to do those problems together in class, but they're also sort of more interesting problems. So the idea is to get students very excited and engaged in the learning process. And the instructor has time during the class period to walk around and answer questions and sort of instigate discussions among students, that sort of thing. MIT was one of the early adapters of the scale-up model, and so here's a picture of their adaptation. It's called the TEAL model, and it stands for Technology Enhanced Active Learning. It's very similar. You'll notice the round pod tables and the screens around the perimeter of the room, the whiteboards. There's no real front of the room, much as in this kind of room that we're in right now. And people love these classrooms. It's not just professors who love it, it's students who love it too. So before I kind of go through the kinds of classrooms that you'll be having in your new building, I'll introduce our special guest. This is Caitlin Fabre. And Caitlin, you can stand up and come over here if you'd like. And Caitlin is a senior accounting major at the McCombs School of Business in Austin. And moments before we started, Caitlin got her first job offer and last job offer because she accepted, right, Caitlin? So Caitlin, yeah, so she'll be working for, would you like to tell us?
KPMG.
KPMG
Congratulations.
as
Federal tax position.
so she's very excited. It's a great moment for
That's
Caitlin.
awesome.
But Caitlin's also been in this year, she's been in one of the Macomb School's new active learning classrooms. And so I thought Caitlin could share just a few words from the perspective of a student, what she thinks about the rooms, what her experiences have been, and also if you have any questions for Caitlin about the differences in interacting with students, this is a good time to do that. And Caitlin, if you want to sit down, you can sit down. That's fine. I'll sit down too. Okay. So I'll let you.
Hi, nice to meet all of you. So first up, I have financial statement analysis in a classroom similar to this. I would say this is more of like the layout. Our desks are rectangles and there's about 5 to 6 seats to a desk. And we have the dry erase boards on the wall. Each desk has a computer screen next to it, or a TV monitor. So that allows each table to plug into that computer or TV screen. And you can split the screen 4 ways. So this actually happened in my class before. We were working on a case project, and a student asked a follow-up question, like what happened to this company now? And the professor didn't know that. So one of the students looked it up and then was able to put it on the screen. And the professor from there could take our screen and put it on any of the projectors in the room. So that is something I love about that classroom, is that not only is the professor teaching us, but I'm learning from my fellow classmates and seeing their points of views. Another great thing I love about the class is the interaction. To me, this space creates more open communication. It's not really the hierarchy lecture halls, and that's actually something I asked my professor what he liked best, and that was what he said his favorite thing about it was. He doesn't like looking up and lecturing. He likes it better like this. It feels more personal. We definitely have more communication in our class than most other accounting classes. It's usually just a professor lecturing, but in our class, there's constant communication between the students and the professor. A third thing that I really love and that helps me a lot is the dry erase boards actually. Because it's easy to see like ratios being solved and new formulas, and it seems to click, but when you go home, you never practiced it. So one of the great things about the dry erase board is getting to work in your team and figuring out a problem by yourself or with all the teammates and comparing answers. And then we'll actually bring our dry erase board to the dock and show it to all the class and teach the class what we learned. So I think those are my 3 top favorite things about the classroom, and I definitely wish that all of my classrooms are like this because it's by far my favorite.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Follow-up questions?
On the multiple monitors at the table, is it a physical connection or is it a software based?
It's not. Well, for us it's mccombs.com, and then you put a slash, and each screen has a little number in the corner. That way no one outside of the classroom can access it.
Sure. Okay.
And that's how you log on.
Gotcha.
Do you find that people multitask less and maybe zone out less in that?
I think so,
situation?
especially because one turn of the chair head and you can see what everyone else in the class is doing. You don't have to awkwardly look backwards at anyone. I think it's definitely more engaging.
Is that a dedicated classroom? Is it only one classroom in?
We have 2 of them. I think those are just our first 2. They just opened this year. We were actually a little late. School started and we were in an old classroom, and then we got to move in. And it was sponsored by Deloitte. It's Deloitte University, is that
Oh, yeah.
there?
It's on. Well, this looks very much like the.
Oh yeah, no, this looks so much like it.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
So with that, we can go through have in your new building. And you'll have great rooms. They can all, with the exception of the large classrooms, be turned into these sorts of rooms where you can work in pods. But the nice thing about your kinds of classrooms, you still do have those large fixed classrooms if that's your preferred style of teaching. You have a couple of flexible classrooms, which is what we call this kind of classroom where the tables and chairs can move around. And then you have medium-sized cluster classrooms, which are like Cashion 109, where you have the ribbon tables that students can turn around and face the smaller boat-shaped tables behind them and work in clusters. And then you have 34 different breakout study spaces.
So how many rooms will there be similar to the one we're in right now in the business building?
Let's see. I think that's right, that are medium, this would be a small size, I would imagine. So 9 are the small size, and then,
So all the small will be outfitted like this?
that's right,
And how many of the mediums?
9 also of those.
All of them will be like this?
That's right,
I
of
thought you
these,
were
of
saying-
flex classrooms, I'm sorry, all flex classrooms will be like this. So there'll be other kinds of classrooms with fixed seating that we're calling large classrooms. And then there'll also be the cluster classrooms. But classes that are like this, which we're calling a flexible classroom, there'll be 9 that seat 24 students and 9 more that seat 40 students.
So it will be possible to get a medium-sized room and configure it like this?
Yes, it will be. And you can do any kind of configuration you want. So you could do the X configuration like this room, pods. You can even do traditional where you have rows. You could do a horseshoe or a rectangle so that you can have more of an open circle conversation. And then you can also do those things in one class period. So you could have a certain activity that required the circle, and then you could break out and move into pods for the second part of the class, which is a neat thing about these flexible classroom spaces. It's easy to do.
And there's probably gonna be a prescribed way to return it back, so whoever comes in behind you.
A default setting. I guess this is the X configuration is this. But those tables in this room are fixed, is that right?
You're limited, you don't have as much mobility with these outside tables because this was retrofit for the power to come through and for the VGA and the HDMI. Chris Meyer, I mean, you can rotate these to any angle that you want. So Chris brings them in where they're like just 2 giant rows facing each other sometimes. You're a little bit restricted on how far you can move these tables, but you can change the angle all you want to. These middle 4 and these, we can do anything you want with.
But in the new rooms, they'll be all mobile.
They should be completely mobile unless there is some type of tethering because of the power. I mean, there's
You don't know what kind of
clearly,
tethering there's gonna be?
it depends. I mean, there's coring that's been done throughout the entire building to get power to the tables. I mean, until we figure out wireless power, which you and I want to do that, we can make trillions. But until there's wireless power, you're going to have some type of, because they all want these.
Okay. So your flexible classroom will have screen sharing capabilities like Caitlin was describing where you as the instructor can go around and choose something that you see on one of your students' screen and project it up and so that you can all talk about it.
Now, is this a mock-up of what our?
No, this is just an example, just a picture of a cluster classroom. This is not a mock-up of your cluster classroom. Do you like it? You like it?
I like the looks of the classroom.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use the tiered classroom.
And I believe that you'll have tables that are tiered, that are graduated sizes rather than, is that right, Josh? Rather than the floor being tiered?
I believe the medium cluster is probably going to be a single tier.
Okay.
So sort of like 109,
Yeah.
and then you're going to have a fixed and kind of a mobile, and then up a tier. I mean, the back room is going to have some type of forward-facing ability. But whenever you break up the cluster, you're going to be limited to like a bottom and a top.
Mhm.
But that's just to aid the. It's a lot like 109.
Mhm. And there'll be 6 of those in the new building, 6 rooms like 109 that we're calling cluster classrooms. And the tables, unlike 109, those smaller boat-shaped tables in 109, those will be bigger so that they can seat more students more comfortably. And then you also have 36 different breakout study spaces in your new building. Dean Manus was interested in faculty thinking about ways that you might capitalize on those spaces. They'll be open day and night, and there'll be some kind of reservation system, but you might think about putting a clause in your syllabus that says, don't forget we have these study spaces. You could also formulate class activities where students need to actually leave the class during class and go use those kind of study spaces. There have been studies on this type of room, and the studies show that if students have food and drink nearby, they're more likely to study in those areas. Also, you could think about manning a table in your new building with writing center tutors, a librarian, an IT specialist, so that students have access to people to help them. Even somebody from communications who can help with presentations, that sort of thing. That would be a nice draw to have students in your building and making use of that space. There are studies that show that students choose a study location early in the semester and they don't deviate from it even when they're not doing well. So you could also think about during your orientations or welcome week type things, showing those spaces off to students and making sure they're aware of that they're there and how they can use them and how it can help them as learners. And there are all kinds of benefits in addition to the ones that Caitlin mentioned. We have multiple studies, multiple cases that show that students learn better when they're participating in their learning. So when they're not passively receiving material, when they're actually trying to create somehow their learning. We've seen studies that show if a student has students who have a certain expectation, grade expectation based on their ACT scores, they usually perform higher than their ACT score projection, and they do well in these rooms. Minorities, women do better in these kinds of learning environments. There's more engagement, students teach each other. The list is really long. Higher level thinking skills, interaction, positive attitudes towards the subject and towards the class in general. So with that, I think that we can move into our teaching demo, unless you have any questions.